My question's to the Treasurer. Will the Treasurer update the House on the impact of the coronavirus on the Australian economy, and how will this inform the Morrison government's response to this challenge?
The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Wentworth for his question and acknowledge his experience as a diplomat representing Australia, including at ambassadorial level, as well as his experience in the private sector before he came to this place. Now, Mr Speaker, when we came to government, unemployment was rising, investment was falling and the budget was deep in the red. As a result of the work that we have done, we have seen the current account reach a surplus for the first time in more than 40 years. We've seen welfare dependency get to its lowest level in 30 years. We've seen the biggest tax cuts in more than 20 years, and the budget is in balance for the first time in 11 years. But we have faced a number of economic shocks that have been outside of our control, Mr Speaker. Clearly, the trade tensions between the United States and China had an impact on the global economy, including here in Australia. The ongoing drought, Mr Speaker, and of course the flood and the fires, and now the coronavirus, Mr Speaker. Now, the spread of the coronavirus is clearly still evolving, but the economic impact of the coronavirus will be much more significant than both SARS and MERS before it, Mr Speaker. And we know that because China is a bigger part of the global economy since that time. In fact, the Chinese economy is 4 times the size it was at the time of SARS, Mr Speaker. In terms of the Australia's economic relationship with China, it's a lot greater today than it was at the time of SARS. Our two-way trade with China is worth more than $200 billion a year, and indeed about a third of our exports go to China. China is the #1 source of international students to Australia, and that market is worth more than $12 billion a year. And in terms of tourism, China is the #1 source of international tourists to this country, and that market is worth more than $1 billion a year, Mr Speaker. Now, at the same time, we are seeing, as a result of the spread of the coronavirus, disruption to international supply chains and disruption to international students and tourists coming to this country. But our response, our fiscal response, will be responsible. It will be considered and it will be targeted. There won't be the reckless and wasteful spending that we've seen from those opposite when it comes to economic shocks. What we will see is we'll see responsible, considered and a targeted response, focusing on ensuring that businesses and those affected are stronger when they come out of this crisis, and that we continue to see strong employment growth across the Australian economy.
The member for Rankin.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. When did the Prime Minister first become aware of the foreign investment conditions he imposed on Alinta Energy as Treasurer, which were meant to protect the privacy of over 1 million Australians, were not being enforced?
The Treasurer has the call.
Well, I thank the member for Rankin. As he would be aware, it is the practice of treasurers and Treasury not to comment on specific foreign investment matters, particularly when they involve compliance issues, and Treasury has put out a statement to that effect, Mr Speaker. What we do know is this side of the House supports foreign investment and free trade, Mr Speaker. On this side of the House, we're very proud of the fact that when we came to government, free trade agreements covered about 26% of our two-way trading relationship. Now it's more than 70%, and that 1 in 5 Australian jobs are related to trade.